Hello and welcome to Make the Logo Bigger. My name is Brenton. This podcast is your gateway into the world of advertising production, crafted especially for those who are stepping in new, aiming to become producers, or simply eager to understand the inner workings of advertising and marketing. We're here to share insights and knowledge you've been looking for, with stories, tips, and real conversations from the pros. We're simplifying the process for everyone with a production curiosity. Whether you're just starting out or keen to explore the production side of ads, you've found the right place. Let's jump in. Today, we speak with Emma Scott, a seasoned producer with over 20 years of experience spanning tourism, automotive, adventure, and large-scale events. Em's journey into production started with a passion for creativity, dabbling in theatre, photography, and the arts before finding her true calling behind the scenes, orchestrating shoots and making the impossible happen. From managing high-profile tourism campaigns to coordinating complex automotive productions, Em has built a career in problem-solving, logistics, and above all else, her relationships. In the episode, we dive into her early career working in government institutions, how she transitioned into producing, and the key lessons learned from those small jobs where every hat had to be worn. Em shares insights on working with directors, the importance of understanding every role on set, and the delicate balance between keeping clients happy and ensuring the creative vision is met. Emma Scott. Emma Scott, thanks for jumping on. It's I said to you off before we jumped on, it is a real privilege that you're willing to hop on and share your insights and just your journey, and hopefully, you know, give some anecdotes or some interesting tidbits that might help somebody else who's on the same journey as we are. So, hey, looking at, as I do, look at LinkedIn, 20 years of experience you've got in this caper, but you started out as a photographer and then jumped into producing. So how did that come about, being a creative and then working into more of a logistical role?
I think being a photographer is a very generous term for what I was. I guess it's a cliche to go back to childhood, but I think I was always creative, always wanted to be in the creative industry. I was really into theatre and drama, musical theatre, dance, performing basically, but then also really loved photography. And I think growing up in a military family as I did, I was the only creative person. And obviously making a choice between, you know, what I was going to study at uni, whether it was photography or acting or arts, I sort of leant towards photography thinking it was a safer option. So, but then, you know, I got into it. My career sort of started in cultural institutions for the government. And I realised I just wasn't that great at actually shooting. So I ended up landing at Destination New South Wales, managing an image and footage library. So I was sort of doing a little bit of event photography, but mainly working, I guess, in the photography field, but not necessarily doing much shooting. And then landed in that job, and I was introduced to producing then. So part of my role was to sort of work as the in-house producer and produce some of the shoots that we were doing. In the early stages, it was very sporadic. The budgets weren't there. I was mainly looking after a collection that was part analog back then, would you believe? And that was only I think I started there in 2008. So that's pretty nuts. And part digital. And then I think it was like my first week or two, one of the ladies that had been working there for a long time, who was just an absolute weapon, she was sort of filling in for me while I was getting used to the role and before I started. And I shadowed her on a shoot, and it was a really small one, just sort of traveling, going around Sydney CBD and doing a still shoot with what was a really small crew. It was just her, myself, the photographer, and assistant, and I think it was 3 talent, and that was it. We were just driving around in a bus. Talent were like getting dressed in the bus, and they brought all their own wardrobe and they were getting changed. And she was producing, she was art directing, styling, everything. And I was just in awe. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And that was it. And then she left me and I had to do it all on my own. And I just did it. And I think my next shoot was in Byron Bay a couple of months later, and another still shoot. And I just got it done. I probably did a terrible job, but I got it done. And I stayed in that role for 7 years. Well, we had like a bit of a restructure in the organisation, and my role, my department expanded, and I was managing a couple of people, and all of a sudden I was producing so many events, so many shoots. Went from only doing a handful a year to every other week, vivid things like that. And I loved it, but I just got to a point where I was done. 7 years, it's a good stretch. So I decided to become a freelancer and haven't looked back. I'm not a freelancer anymore, but I work for a bunch of different people, different companies, agencies. But funnily enough, I think within the first 6 months of me becoming a freelancer, I met Qube, and he was just at a point now then where he was sort of getting quite well known for his automotive shooting as just one thing. And he really needed a producer he could trust. And and we did a shoot not long after, and that was it. So we've been working together ever since.
And a heck of a journey. And like most producers, it's funny how people fall into it. You kind of you start out somewhere else, and then you end up, doing what we do. What is it about producing that you love?
I think it's being across everything. It's not just, this is my part. It's like I'm involved in everything, and I need to be all over it to make sure it's a success. I need to put the right people in touch to work out the different elements. I need to have a good relationship. I'm all about relationships and making sure everyone's happy. I think, I really value that. So I really value the relationship I have with the client and all of my team. It's not just about me and the photographer or the director and the client, it's everyone. And everyone's important. Everyone has a really important role to play. And I appreciate everyone on set.
So when you are working with directors and photographers, what is it that you think that you get about them? What is it that you're looking at what they do that you already know that you're anticipating or planning for?
I think it's understanding the creative element to it. I always go back to, I read this amazing book. Have you read Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull?
No, I haven't, no.
So he's the creator, he was like the founder of Pixar. And he wrote this incredible book that sort of talks about working in creative teams and leading creative teams. And I, early on in my career, I used to struggle with, like I was sort of saying before, about trying to keep everyone happy and making everyone like me. I would really struggle. I think I had a couple of shoots, and this was back when I was freelancing, so I didn't have as much control over who was on set. I could have just been thrown into, an existing team. And I struggled with, oh God, I just don't think I connect with that person. Why don't they like me? And I sort of put all this energy into that and just got, myself down about it. This book was incredible because one of the massive takeaways for me was that everyone on set has their own agenda. And if any one person got their own way completely, the project would fail. Because you think if the director had a million versions of how they wanted to shoot the shot and they did that, we'd go over budget, we'd go over time. And you can sort of assign that to any certain role. And even the producer, if the producer got their way completely, it might be a real soulless project because your focus is on budget and time. So that really helped me sort of see things a bit differently and just go, you know what, it's okay to be a bit of a hard ass if the moment requires it. Or, lead people down a different path, or if someone's not doing the right thing on set, it's okay to be, a bit more demanding or tell them off or whatever. And if they don't like you, then so be it. But the most important thing is the job. So, and having a successful outcome where all of those things balance. So that's something that I've always kept in mind. And so I think in that respect, that's why the producer needs to sort of really understand and put forward is the wrong term, but just sort of have that understanding of what everyone's role is and give them that that sort of balance and that sort of leniency, but always sort of bring it back to where it needs to be in the end.
Yeah.
If you don't have that creative vision, if you can't sort of see what the director or the photographer is trying to do, then you're going to struggle. So,
and it's a great point to know, because it's something that I ask, particularly producers or even anybody when it comes to producers. Do producers need to have a creative vision? Do they, or not creative vision? Do they need to be able to see creative or see the outcome? And I think the overwhelming majority is that most people agree. If you want to be a producer, you've got to kind of understand how creativity comes apart. You can see it in your mind, or you can see the idea that the director or the photographer wants to put together. So it is advantageous. Hey, tell me about, so, you're saying that you want to be a people pleaser and, keep everybody happy. What's it like when you have to be that bit stronger? Do you have to motivate yourself? Do you have to have a bit of a chat with yourself? Or do you still, even now, find it sometimes a little difficult to have those harder conversations?
I think, interestingly, when I'm on set, I'm okay. But it's probably the pre-conversations where, someone might have a different idea of what the thing is, or especially if it's a client, I guess, and reining that in. But then also it's problem solving, right? It's like, okay, you can have a problem, but you need to come back with a solution. So it's not just sort of going, no, we're not going to do that. It's like, that might not work because of blah, 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 but how about this, And I think that's the key thing that we need to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then the same with Qube or whoever else is is the problem. But I think I'm so fortunate now that especially with Qube, like, we've got such a good team that I rarely have any issues on set, and it's usually not with my team, because we're so, we get to sort of choose our team. We've got our core crew now, and we work so well together that it's never an issue.
Yeah, and that's why in any of the creative endeavours, that's why directors always work with the same people. That's why producers always work with the same people, because you don't want the hassle and you don't want the drama, and you don't need it, particularly when there's a million other things that you're thinking of and trying to get right. So again, I go back to that example. Well, looking for an example, I should say. What's it like when you have to talk to a client or an agency when it's that difficult time? Perhaps you've got to drop some shots, or somebody's asking something that's probably cutting into your time or making things a bit more difficult. What's that like for you? Have you got a bit of a? Is there a bit of a dot point plan that you have? Have you done it so often that you and the team have got a way where you go away, confer, and come back, or is time the essence? Do you try and catch something even earlier before it even happens?
Yeah, I think picking it up early is always good, and sort of knowing and having that sort of conversation with the core crew away from client, and just going, look, this is, we're starting to run out of time or whatever, or how can we do things differently? And the guys are really good. A lot of our guys are multi-skilled, so we'll maybe set something else up while we're going. It's always this sort of thing of, okay, well, or can we shoot this at the same time or whatever. It's the problem solving, and it really comes down to what the actual shoot is. But I think, again, always if it's to a point where it's like, okay, maybe the client's asking for more shots, and we're like, well, felt like we got it or whatever, and it's sort of dragging on, then I think it's the going to them with, we can keep going, and we might miss this shot. So do we miss that shot, or do we keep going, or do we want to do overtime, or what's your priority? And usually that comes pretty clear after that. Yeah. But it's always trying to work it out internally first, and figuring out different ways that we may not have scheduled it, and then
of course,
sort of thinking on your feet, right? That's all it is. Yeah,
it is.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and it's but once you do it enough times, you kind of know that there's a bit of a routine and a bit of a pattern that and everybody after a while, particularly the more experienced people that you work with, whether it be agency, client side, crew, you kind of know that there's a bit of a give and a take, really. If somebody's wanting something more from one side, then particularly if it's from client or agency, then it's fine, but you're going to have to probably give something in the back end as well, to make it work. I was having this interesting conversation with an agency producer the other day about when you're on set and you're having chats, and this person was telling me, we were just going back and forth, and I said, I remember I gave an example. I was on a set and look, do you mind? Can you come and have a chat with me, with the photographer? And whatever, she pulled me up and didn't pull me up, but she was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't have those kind of conversations because it already elicits some sort of concern, perhaps, with with a client on set or something like that. What's it like for you, when you are having those conversations? Or do you like to have them away from everybody else? Or do you go to a different channel and talk to somebody on the walkie-talkies? Is there something you just would not do that you find, or you think that some people might do on set, or you've seen on set?
I think it depends on the shoot. With a lot of the automotive shoots that we do, the client and you might have video village far away from where we actually are, so it's much easier to go over there and just have like a little hushed conversation and it not really be an issue. I think it's quite normal to have little huddles about different things. I certainly don't sort of worry too much about that. It could be anything. It could be anything from the catering hasn't arrived yet. A huddle doesn't have to mean that something's wrong. It could just mean, just updating you on whatever. Let's
talk about just issues. And this is and you don't have to name clients or agencies or anyone like that. What's probably the biggest issue you've ever had when you've been on a shoot, an actual shoot day? And how did you fix it, or how did you resolve it?
Probably the first thing that comes to mind would probably be.
And please don't mention any agencies or clients or anybody like that.
No. I'm going to actually say it would be more an internal issue.
Okay.
And again, this is something that hasn't happened for a long time because this was early in my freelancing career, where I just was butting heads with someone else on set, to the point I cried at one point, which I have not done since, and I refuse. I think that's the hard thing, because if you're just not connecting with someone and it's probably the most important person within your team, how do you work through that? And I think that was a tricky one. It was a long time ago, but I just think anything else is sort of solvable if it's something not working, or you just pivot. We usually provide so much equipment on set that even if something's not working, we can figure something else out, or that would probably be the other big thing. But I guess on a rare occasion, you're in a location and someone comes up, they're not aware that you were allowed to be there, and so you get delays with that kind of thing. But even then, usually you just be like, hey, sweet talk them and offer them a case of beer or something, and you can get around it. But I think that it's the two relationships of the core people that's a hard one to get past, I think.
You seem to have worked across, tourism. You've event produced. You've done automotive. You've done adventure. What are the ones that you like the most? What are the jobs you find most fulfilling?
You're always going to pick the things that are very different to anything else. But I did a diploma of professional styling many, many years ago, and I love. I can't help myself. I love doing the styling elements. So I've done quite a few jobs where I've done producing and styling, and I love it. Like, it's full on, and it's never like super, super intricate. But if it ends up becoming a little bit more art department, if it's just wardrobe, it's fine. I can manage that and a few bits and pieces. Although I did do a shoot quite some time ago where it was I was producing at wardrobe and art department, and it was like I needed to create, I think it was something like 10 litres of slime that had to be thrown onto the talent, which I discovered long life custard and green food dye works a treat if anyone needs to make slime. We needed to fill a bath full of jelly beans, and I had to work how many kilos of jelly beans do I need for that? Throwing glitter. So it was so fun. But it was one of those early shoots where I didn't consider the cleanup. You know, like I was so focused on getting the props and doing the job that afterwards, I mean, you know, I obviously put down drop sheets and all that kind of stuff, but, you know, when you're throwing glitter and slime, it's going to go everywhere. So it was a really long day. I think it was a 12-hour shoot day, and then I had to stay behind and try to clean this bloody warehouse, which was a bit of a grimy warehouse. I don't even think it's there anymore. I think they knocked it down and built apartments, Sydney. But I remember, they were not impressed, and I got a bit of a fee for that at the end. So that was, again, very early on, and I've always, you know, rubbish removal site. I'm very diligent about that now, but yeah, that was a funny one. So it's things like that. I mean, I've been a fixer for international crews and sort of, you know, gone with them around the country. I did event production for the North Face. I've done quite a few events for them. We did one in New Zealand, which was epic. So it's all the different. I like ones that involve a bit of travel. It's more than just the 10-hour day in a Sydney location. I like when there's a lot more logistics to go with it.
So what about this? So yeah, producer, agent, production manager, account manager, location scout, talent, crew sourcer, researcher, personal assistant. This is all in your LinkedIn bio, by the way. How important do you think it is that if you're a producer to understand all these different roles? I was going to say, I personally think it's so important. I think if you could understand each individual's roles, particularly if you're guiding them and you know, asking them to do stuff, I think it's really important. But yourself?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I try to try to get really involved. That makes me sound like a bloody crew manager, but I like being involved in every element. And really talking to the crew about what they need. I think I've learned that, again, early on in my career, I think the most important thing is getting the schedule right. And if you do a schedule where you have not allowed enough time for people to do the thing that they do best, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's always like, you know, as small as briefing in hair and makeup artists and saying, how much time do you need for this? And really giving them not, you know, going crazy, because obviously, again, you've got to balance it with, you know, well, what does the overall production need, and you've got all of this other stuff that we've got to do, but letting them also feel like they've had a bit of a say in it, instead of just going, you've got like 10 minutes just to get the thing done. I and myself and the other guys here were very involved in the location scouting and making sure that that's right. Going and wrecking everything, you know, being really involved in that. Definitely. I think it's really important to have a good understanding of every element.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Hey, you just mentioned location scouting. What's probably the most important thing? I'd love to hear your thoughts when you are location scouting. Let's give you a scenario where, you know, you're out in the boondocks somewhere, or you're out in rural areas. What's something you find that you always want to remember or know when you're out in those kind of areas?
Toilets.
Right, yeah.
Toilets, facilities. I mean, you know, you can always bring in a unit van or a portaloo for that, but I think that's important. And catering, like where are you getting your catering from? It's all the little things that aren't necessarily about the shoot that sort of fix everything. Parking, you know, that's not necessarily relevant when you're in the middle of nowhere, but parking, access, it's how far away everything is from each other. I mean, most shoots now are never just one location, are they? It's always multiple. So, you know, it's always, again, it's a balance. It's the trade-off of, okay, this location is epic, but we're nowhere near anything else. The accommodation is, you know, an hour's drive away. You know, that's eating into your shoot time. It's also nowhere near the next location. You know, it's all of those things. And I think, you know, obviously you can give the client the option and just go, well, you know, you love this place, but this is the reality. It's going to cost you, you know, double. But always sort of keeping that in mind of, you know, where is this to this to this to this? And yeah. I love it. I mean, location, automotive shoots, location scouting. Oh, it's the hardest. It's the hardest part of my job, but I love it as well. You know, it's a challenge to solve, and and it's so particular because it's not just about the location it's, you know, you're thinking about reflections, you're thinking about, you know, road surface and you know, the traffic management elements and all of that. There's so much more to it. Yeah.
That's a great one to consider because, again, my automotive is limited. But what are some of the things that you do? You just mentioned you've got to think of reflections, obviously, in buildings going past. The road surface, does it have to be a certain colour? You know, what about familiarity? Like, do you go back to the same places all the time, or do you try and find new spots?
Always try to find new spots, but there's a reason why you see the same locations in so many automotive shoots, and it's regardless of what company's involved. It's not that it's just us. It's Sydney's hard, you know. You've got parked cars everywhere, and obviously you can't show any other cars in a commercial. Or, you know, you can obviously sort of close it, but that becomes a very costly exercise. The road surface, if there's lots of speed humps, it's going to affect, obviously, the drive, especially if you're doing tracking shots. If there's a median strip, you can't sort of, you know, cross into the next lane to get the tracking shots. Road surface, potholes, is it like those ugly roads where they've got the, you know, they've done dodgy patch-up jobs? It's not going to look good. You know, so there's so many things that are not even to do with the actual road, you know, or the actual location. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider. And then also, is it a road that you're going to get permission to do traffic management on? Some you need months in advance to get the right permits in place. So most shoots these days do not have that kind of lead time. So, you know, you're very limited with where you can go.
What are the places that take months? And I have done permitting for different roads or different usage. I know there's certain places that you need a month at least, particularly if it's a major road controlled by the, you know, the Vic roads or the RTA. What are the roads that take the longest, you find?
I think they're the major ones, like, you know, there'll be highways, freeways, anything that's sort of the main artery. Or multiple stakeholders own it. It's not necessarily just a straightforward, it's that council or it's, you know, the RMS. Those sort of things. So it's not, and you don't necessarily know. It's not until you go down the line you find out. So it's always a risk, which is the other reason you sort of end up playing it safe if you're running it short window of time. So
and you
always have a backup.
And then you go back to the roads. That's why everybody uses the same roads. Go back to the same road that you know that's going to be easy. You've already got the relationships with the people who are signing off. Just makes life a lot easier. You ever shot on Sydney Harbour Bridge?
As in the bridge. I'm pretty sure we've done rolling roadblocks across there. Yeah, which is, you know, you've got a really small window of time to do that. It's like, you know, and I'm going to butcher this, so apologies to everyone who's listening, or anyone who's listening, if anyone is actually listening, if I get this wrong. But it's something like you've got between 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, and then that's your only window of time.
Humorous experiences. People always love to hear great stories or just funny things that happen where you just, you know, it might be a bit dicey when you're doing it, but with the time, a bit of distance, you go, oh yeah, that was. I can laugh about it now.
I can only sort of really talk about things that are in my control, but one thing that we always have a bit of a joke about here is catering. I put so much time and effort into catering for these guys. So we've got dietary considerations. I'm allergic to peanuts. We've got a gluten-free, dairy-free, and then other guys that just eat like horses. So I'm always trying to accommodate. You know, I could be in the shops late at night, the night before, reading ingredients lists on things and trying to work out the best snacks. It's insane. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I just throw it all in. But there are times when I try really hard to give them different things to eat as well, because I'm very aware that these guys are sometimes on back-to-back shoots. And so I try to give them like healthy things to eat. You know, it's like carrot sticks with hummus. And, I'll do all this stuff. And then sometimes on set, none of it gets eaten and I'm just like throwing it out at the end and I'm so annoyed. But there was one morning which I was very proud of myself. I've got all this cereal, everyone's catered to different things. This was a really early start, and making sandwiches and toasties, and I had everything ready to go and offering people cereal, and I totally forgot spoons. And so I was just like, okay, just walk that to the side. So it's the little things that, you get caught up in the thing, but you forget about the other things that.
And I bet you never forgot spoons. I bet you never forgot spoons ever again.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, all those little things that happen. So what about advice? So 20 years of experience, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to start out as a producer?
It's all about relationships. And I think that's not even a producer piece of advice. That's for everyone. Meet people, network. Network is so scary. I was a terrible networker when I started out. Luckily, my best friend is an incredible networker, so that was she was very helpful. Networking, try different things. It's interesting. I feel like I tried, and as a freelancer, you have that flexibility to try different things. If you had told me that I would be looking after, I think it was like 30 people traveling to New Zealand, and some of them, snowshoeing up remarkable, skiing backcountry and doing all these things and looking after them for 3 days for a future launch for the North Face, I would be like, what? I can't do that, but I did it, And I think it's just trying things, doing things. I think if you're a good project manager or producer, that skill set lends itself to so many different things, whether it's an event, still shoot, film shoot, just give it a try, talk to different people, learn from them, be willing to learn, throw in the hours of doing it. My big piece of advice though is sleep. I'm all about the sleep, and I know there are definitely times where I thought I had to stay awake late to get the job done, and the next morning I was just ruined. Whereas actually understanding your best way of working. So for me, I'm very much a first thing in the morning person. I get up, have a coffee, I can get stuck into things. My brain is sharp. Whereas some people work better at night, but I find that now I have to turn the laptop off by 8 at the very latest, and then have that downtime before I sleep. Otherwise, I just can't sleep. Yeah. So I think the times where people struggle, especially producers, most of the time it would be because they're not sleeping well. And I think you need to be sharp. You need to be all over it. So sleep, always prioritize sleep. And just have fun with it. It's such a fun job. I mean, it's one of those jobs that, and even anyone in the industry, but particularly a producer, because you've got to go so deep dive into it, is you get to be immersed in a world that is not your own, depending what the shoot is, right? So if, this shoot that I did for a French-Canadian film crew that came in, and it was a children's character film where it's called Arthur the Adventurer, and he sang songs about wildlife. And we travelled around Australia, and I was learning all stuff. We were at Kakadu, we were at Uluru, we were at Alice Springs, and they're all places. I'm lucky that I had been to them for a couple of other shoots before, so I sort of knew where to go and how to organise it. But to be immersed in a world with a company from overseas, learning songs that they created about different Australian animals. I mean, it was just such a unique experience that never to be replicated again. And who gets to do that? That's such a unique thing to do. And that's just one job that I've been on out of the hundreds of jobs that I've done.
Well, Em, that's it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you jumping on. Again, 20 years of experience across everything. Certainly, your skill set is wide-reaching, and I'm sure that you have got things nailed pretty much most of the time when you're working. So it's great to hear from a professional, and I'm sure people will get something out of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Absolute pleasure. Well, that's it for today on Make the Logo Bigger. Thanks for hanging out with us. We've shared some insights and stories that I hope you found useful. Whether you're just getting started or diving deeper into ad production, there's always more to explore. Keep listening, stay curious, and we'll be back soon with some more from the world of production. Take care until then.